Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for clicking on the video as always. I'm on Mar Lodge Estate. I promised myself last autumn that I would get back here for a proper camp after all the drone drama. I never actually camped here in the end. I basically hiked out about 7 kilometers to the pinewood remnant in Glen Cuach. I found a nice little comfortable pitch under this big Scots pine here. We've got the burn is maybe, I don't know, 30 meters away, so I've got a water source, and we're hoping to spend 2 nights here. The weather's really nice today, quite warm, you know, that kind of autumnal sunshine. Tomorrow's looking a bit damp, and then Wednesday's looking a bit of both really, but hopefully we should have a nice time out. Just as I came around the corner there, I've lost phone signal as well, so I completely cut off, so it should be quite a nice relaxing camp. I've actually been doing a bit of a tour around. I'm off work for the week and I was down sort of Pitlochry direction the last few days, Loch Tummel, Loch Rannoch, Glen Lyon, these sort of areas, and the colour's just fantastic at the moment. Even here, not so much here because there's not anything with colour, but at the entrance to the glen where there's more birch and, you know, broadleaves, you know, the colour is really nice. And driving from Braemar to Mar Lodge as well, lots of colour. But I'm not going to say too much more just now. It's getting quite late in the day, it's almost 3 o'clock, so I'm going to make a coffee and something to eat because I haven't had anything since breakfast. I've got the little wood burning lo-fi stove with me, which I showed you in another video. Really lightweight, really easy to use. So I'll pick up a few cones and little bits of twig, and yeah, we'll get some water boiled just now. Well, it's 5 o'clock now. Still feeling really mild, to be honest. It's about 10 or 12 degrees. there's no wind, so it's quite comfortable. I took the X-Fire 19 wood stove with me just in case there was an opportunity to have a little controlled fire. I found like a perfectly flat rock as well, so I'll have the stove on that, and I've got the heatproof mat as well, so there's no chance of you know, setting the ground on fire or anything. Plenty of water nearby because we're just by the river if anything does get out of hand. So and like I say, I'm not going to have like a big raging fire. You know me by now, I never do, so it should be fine. That is 10 o'clock. I haven't really done much at all this evening. I've just sat by the fire, not filmed much, just enjoying, relaxing, and it's just such a nice evening. Although I might look a bit cold because I got my hood up, it's very comfortable, especially by the fire. It still hasn't really dropped much below 10 degrees, I don't think. But yeah, I'm going to let this fire die down and then head off to bed, I think. But I'll leave it there for now, and I will see you in the morning. Morning folks, it rained pretty much all night up to about half an hour ago. It's 9 o'clock now. We weren't in a rush to really get up and get moving. So it's a little bit damp this morning, very overcast, lots of low cloud, but it's still relatively mild. Like, it doesn't have that cold chill to it that I was expecting, so that's good. It's very dry under this big Scots pine where I'm sitting. That's kind of why I chose this spot, to be honest. Although I do have the waterproof trousers on, because walking through all this deep heather when it's damp, you'll get soaked in no time. I've just been having a little wander around the wood here and exploring a little bit. I thought I would take some time to talk about where I am. You can take this as your forest thoughts. I talked about Mar Lodge quite a bit in my Eastern Pinewoods video last year, and I'll probably repeat a lot of what I said there. But as I said earlier, we're at Mar Lodge Estate, and Mar Lodge is on the eastern side of the Cairngorm National Park. It's roughly 29,000 hectares in size, making it one of the UK's largest national nature reserves, and it's owned by the National Trust for Scotland, and that has been the case since 1995. And what have we got here? Well, we've got everything from the river right to the mountaintop. We've got riparian habitat, we've got the pinewoods, we've got peatland, glens, moorland, everything really. You know, the estate has the full spectrum of habitats to work with. And I suppose I'll start by talking a little about the history and how it ended up in the condition it was by 1995. And essentially this area was actually a collection of smaller Highland estates, and in the 1800s it became a bigger sort of Victorian sporting estate, and it was managed for, you know, deer, sport shooting, grouse, you know, you had burning, you would have had sheep in here as well. There's been commercial forestry here, you know, there's still areas of plantation. A lot of these woods would have had trees felled over the years, trees felled still during the First and Second World War. And like a lot of these estates, it ended up being basically a monoculture of mature Scots pine. I mean, most of the trees here, I don't know, 200, 250 years old, and there was, you know, before the current management, there was nothing much else below that. A lot of the broadleaf species that don't live as long and are more palatable to deer were long gone as well. And these blocks of woodland that survived basically became just a bit of shelter for deer. You can see that from the aerial shots that you had these surviving pockets of woodland, but there's very large open areas, you know, heather dominated areas in between them. So the pockets of woodland were fragmented. The high deer numbers meant that there was no regeneration. The fact that the ground was, you know, quite rank and heather dominated just made it harder for any regeneration to happen, and it was all just a bit stagnant really. And if nothing changed, then these woods would have just died on their feet because there was no new trees coming through, there was no recruitment, you know, to keep the woodland regenerating. Fast forward to 1995, and the National Trust for Scotland bought Mar Lodge Estate with quite a bit of help from other conservation bodies and the Heritage Lottery Fund. Part of that purchase, there was an agreement to restore nature across the estate, but also to maintain some kind of sporting element still. So essentially what the Trust have done is designate 2 management zones on the estate. We've got the regeneration zone and the sort of sporting zone, I guess you could call it. There's 3 main sort of core pinewood areas that have survived on the estate, and that's Glenderry, Glencuach, where I am now, and Glenlouis. And all those 3 areas are within the regeneration zone, which is fenced. There's a boundary fence around this area. A no tolerance approach to deer within the regeneration zone, and the estate still carries out its sporting activities in the sporting zone. And the impact of that management in the regeneration zone and the evidence that we're seeing on the ground really just speaks for itself. I mean, there's trees popping up everywhere here. Pine regeneration, fantastic. But what impresses me more when I come here is the broadleaf regeneration. You know, lots of birch, lots of rowan, because these species are more palatable to deer. You know, they're softer species. These species aren't always still present in an area, so to see lots of regeneration of those types of species as well, that's really encouraging, because you know management is doing what it intended. But you're starting to see, you know, really dense regeneration around some of the surviving trees, and especially in sort of riparian areas along the river, where you get that sort of well-drained, sort of sandy, gravelly substrate. That's what pine trees love. That's what they grow best in. So you're really starting to see, dense pulses of pine in these areas. When it gets to sort of the deeper rank heather, where the ground's a bit more wet, it's not so favourable for pine, so the regeneration isn't quite as dense, but it is still happening. And even as you move up the hill, you're starting to see little pines dotted everywhere. Obviously it's harder for seed to travel uphill, so that takes a little bit longer, but again, it still is happening. And the difference now is, if a pine is trying to regenerate in an area that's not favourable, it's going to take longer. And now the deer pressure's off, the trees have that time to get up and get away. Whereas if you have a lot of deer, they just keep getting picked off and eaten, as soon as they pop up and appear. So that's really the difference. That's it. It's really simple. You just don't have a lot of deer eating everything that's trying to regenerate. Now, we had a presentation from Shyla, who's the conservation manager here, at the Pinewood conference last year, and she was saying that they even have aspen popping up in places, like I say, birch, rowan, the pine, at quite high elevations as well, like montane willows. Areas of montane willows are starting to recover now and get regeneration too. So it's really quite positive and encouraging to come here and actually see these things that we talk about so much all the time actually happening on the ground. I mean, the ecology and the science side of these things is very straightforward. You reduce that deer pressure and trees grow. I don't think you can really argue that fact now. You hear a lot of arguments about how trees don't grow in Scotland, it's too windy, it's too wet, they won't grow at elevation. Well, I'm sitting at 500 metres here, and there's some pretty significant massive trees here, and lots of them, like I can see them all across the hillside, and quite a bit higher than me as well. I mean, I think I'm looking up to probably about 650 metres, and there's pine recorded higher than that on this estate as well. So like I say, that argument that trees don't grow in Scotland, it's just a nonsense. It's just that we've created conditions in a lot of areas where they can't. And you'll get some people still that create such detailed and sophisticated sounding arguments against doing this kind of thing. And they'll put a lot of effort into that. And they're just so determined to ignore basic ecology and evidence on the ground, like we're literally seeing it here, But the cultural side of this argument for woodland regeneration and how we fund these things, that's obviously a lot more complex, and that one can go round and round and round, because a lot of it is based on people's opinion and feelings. But I think now we've got enough evidence in enough places to show that reducing deer numbers and browsing pressure just works. It just works. That's it. It just works. And I suppose my final thought is that I don't really see restoring these woodlands as like an end point, and then it's just hands off, we don't touch them. And I know a lot of people think that way, but I see this sort of regeneration process as a stepping stone. Once we've got more areas full of woodland, then we should still be able to use them. We need to be sensitive and keep things in balance, which we haven't done in the past. But there's no reason you couldn't take timber or wood products from an area like this. If it's full of forest, you can bring deer back in as well. I'm not trying to get rid of deer or completely exclude deer from everything. I mean, they're part of the ecosystem. And then you would have bigger deer, healthier deer, which just seems like a no-brainer to me. You know, I think the cat's out of the bag in terms of us recreating this like untouched wilderness in Scotland. Like, we just don't have that luxury or space, you know, but we have so much potential to create more multi-purpose woodland habitats. And I think that's what often gets lost in this argument. It either has to be, you know, restoring nature or something that we manage. And it can absolutely be both. And it should be both, I think. You're going to have areas that you're not going to touch, of course. I'm not saying we should just exploit all these areas again. But you're going to have a lot of areas that you can work with. And yeah, achieve multiple objectives, no problem. Anyway, I'll leave it there just now. I'm getting a bit hungry now, so I think I will head back to camp for some lunch. It was brightening up a little bit, but it's kind of clouded over again, and it's drizzling pretty steady, but still not the worst. When I was walking up and down the river here, and just round about here, I noticed there's lots of different posts and markers and tapes and these kind of things, and I'm assuming it's all to do with monitoring the natural regeneration along this stretch, of which there is a lot. But I actually have a pinewood managers meeting here in a couple of days. That's partly why I tied in this trip, because I needed to be over this way for work anyway. So yeah, hopefully we'll find out more about that kind of thing. I think it'll be an interesting visit. Quite heavy showers rolling in this afternoon, so we've just been hunkering down in the tent, reading my book. It's about 5:45 now, so I will head out soon and get the fire on and have some dinner, I think. Yeah, the wind's definitely died down now, and the rain's kind of moved through, I think, and we're in for a clearer, cooler night. I never mess around with long-handled spoons and all that kind of stuff. Just cut the packet. Like, it's not that difficult. You'll just cut the packet, and then you've got a bowl. Pretty simple, to be honest. It smells good. It looks quite good as well. Right guys, that's 10 o'clock. It's still around 4 degrees according to the thermometer. The wind's picking up again and it's feeling quite chilly at times. We're going to get into the tent now after this burns down a little bit, and yeah, we'll see you in the morning. Right guys, that's me all packed up here. Another pretty good trip. I'm glad I finally made it into Marlodge Estate for a proper camp. But yeah, I'll leave it there just now. Thanks as always for watching. I might add in some extra clips if I see anything interesting on the loop round the other side. But if not, I will hopefully see you on the next one.